Okay, so I'll just kind of tell you again what my study is. So it's a very informal study, more as a class project for a research class
Right.
for my doctorate program. And I think I told you after the class the other day, I've been very interested in the gender gap in STEM, and so I've been writing papers about it. So then when Becky told me about the program, I thought it'd be a great program to kind of look at and evaluate a little bit.
Sure.
So I would love to first just get a little bit about your teaching background and you know how long you've been at St. Bernard and that kind of stuff.
Okay. So teaching is a second career for me.
Uh-huh.
I actually worked as a biologist for a federal agency called the Army Corps of Engineers for about 12 years, right out of college. And I did environmental planning and environmental compliance for large federal construction projects. So when we had a project, it was my job to make sure we were in compliance with the Endangered Species Act, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and whatnot. And then I stayed home with my kids for about 9 years. And then when my youngest was in kindergarten, I actually student taught then. So I went back to school part-time and got my credential at Cal State Dominguez Hills, and then student taught when she was in a full-day kindergarten. And then after my student teaching was over, I took a long-term sub position at Culver City Middle School where I had student taught, and that ended up being the whole second semester.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, yeah, I did sixth grade earth science.
Oh, cool.
And then from there, I was kind of interested in staying there, and then they said, well, we kind of want, it was a part-time job. They were like, well, we kind of want to consolidate and just have, a full-time person. So I said, fine, I'm out of here. And then I got my job at St. Bernard in that next, over the summer, more or less. And so I've been there since fall of 2010, so this is my 7th year.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always taught, I'm part-time, I've always taught 2 biologies and 1 AP environmental science.
Okay. And tell me about the single gender program and when how have you been teaching it since the beginning?
We actually implemented that. I think this is our 3rd full year of implementing that. I believe that Mass might have done a pilot program before that. So this is like 4 years ago, I guess.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it was the whole year or semester, but so let's see. I've had 2 full years of single gender. This is my 3rd year. So the first year I had 1 girl's bio and 1 boy's bio.
Mm-hmm.
And then same thing last year. I had 1 girl's and 1 boy's. And this year, just the way my work schedule kind of fell out, I just have 2 girls' biologies, and then we have another teacher who's teaching the boys' biology.
Okay. So do you teach co-ed right now also?
So I have 2 all-girls biology sections. He has 2 all-boys bio sections.
Yeah.
And then my AP environmental science class is actually co-ed.
Oh, okay.
And that's juniors and seniors.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, and so what do you think is the impact of single gender science classes specifically for the girls?
I think it's been very good for them. From what I've seen, they are just really fully participating. I think they're more comfortable speaking in class.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you still have people that are more introverted and quiet and don't volunteer to talk a whole lot, but sorry, that's another call. I'm just going to ignore it.
Oh.
But I just feel like they participate more. And what's very interesting to me is that, gosh, I'm sorry, hang on.
Okay.
All right, I sent it to voicemail. Hopefully that worked.
Okay.
Anyway, what because I'm a female teacher, they talk a lot more about girl stuff, like how how your body works, and, reproductive cycle. They get into a lot more detail. I never had that in a mixed gender class.
Interesting.
We talk about pregnancy and breast milk. I mean, it's really interesting, the things that come up.
Yeah.
And that hadn't happened, that did not happen in a mixed gender class. So
Right.
I find that very interesting. And so because of the interest, and things, and I didn't initiate any of this, but the last 2 years, the first year, they, were very interested in just how things work and, basically their anatomy too.
Right.
So I had a day where we just kind of looked, read through the book of just the section of the female anatomy. We looked at the reproductive system. We looked at the male reproductive system too, and then we just kind of opened it up to questions and whatnot. And I did that last year also, and I'm gonna see, if I do that this year. This year I kind of tagged along with, we actually do frog dissection. So we're doing anatomy, and then we look at body systems, and I just kind of tagged that onto the reproductive system, onto kind of the tail end of that. So I thought that was very interesting that had happened.
Yeah, very cool. So you talked a lot about benefits. Do you think there are any challenges or negatives to it?
Nothing that strikes me immediately. We just did our open house, and in my presentation, I say I do feel like it's the best of both worlds, because you're getting the single gender experience and the co-ed experience at the same time.
Right.
So I haven't noticed with the girls negativity. I mean, there's a little bit of, not all the girls get along, and so that's maybe a little more obvious. And there's maybe a little back and forth in class. They're irritated with each other that maybe wouldn't have been there with the boys, but nothing really striking.
Okay.
For girls, yeah.
And in your AP class that you mentioned, do you have girls in there that have gone through the single gender classes?
This is the first year. So this is the first year, and I've been thinking about that, like who is in my single gender, and that's in there now. And I don't know if most of those girls were kind of outgoing. Several of them were very outgoing to begin with, so they tend to participate in this class. And I think it's maybe more in nature just of their personality than having had that experience. But I don't know if I can tease that out.
Right. Okay. All right. Do you think there is an effect? I mean, if you're maybe not necessarily seeing it for sure, but what's your perspective on what you think the benefits are after they go back to the co-ed classes, if any?
Well, I'm hoping that just they have more confidence in math and science to begin with. Because we did some reading of research early on, and one of the things that struck me about the reading that different papers and stuff that we read was that girls tend to be less confident in these subjects than boys.
Yeah.
Even though they're performing at the same level or higher level than boys.
Right.
And boys tend to be very confident, whether they're performing at a high level or not.
Exactly.
Kind of
yeah.
They're like, I'm good at this, even if I'm not.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of what I read too for my papers as well.
Right. So I'm hoping that it lays a groundwork for them to gain confidence in these subjects, and then when they're back, in a co-ed class, that they keep that confidence that I can do this, and hopefully they're a little more outspoken and they don't let the boys take over, either discussions or laboratory experiments or whatever, that they hold their own and aren't kind of pushed around or quieted by the boys.
Right. Okay.
So that's my hope, is they gain confidence, and then they keep it as
Yeah.
they move through.
Right. Good. Okay. That is the hope. I hope.
Mm-hmm.
And how about your teaching style? Does it differ, do you think, or between the single gender versus co-ed classes?
I can't say that it really does. I mean, it's interesting because again, we had to do reading, so we read a lot of Michael Furian, but I think it's still very controversial. Like, the brain. There's not enough evidence to say, well, the brains are really different or they work differently.
Mm-hmm.
And some people really disagree with, well, you should teach boys this way, you should teach girls this way. So I can't say. I mean, one of the things I remember reading was, well, boys like competition, so you can have some friendly competitions when you're, reviewing material.
Mm-hmm.
Girls tend to be more verbal and vocal. So I don't know. I guess the bottom line is no.
Okay.
I don't really change my teaching styles for either all boys or all girls or co-ed. I'm kind of doing similar things.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then, if you could implement anything that you wanted to continue to encourage girls in STEM, what would that be, if anything?
Well, a part of me would be curious to add an additional year to our program, because right now we're just freshmen and sophomores.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be interesting to have one more layer, like the junior math and science, have that be single gender.
Yep.
But we just don't have the resources and the staff to do that at this point because we're too small.
Yeah.
In terms of the number of our students.
Yeah, the other two teachers said the same thing too.
Yeah. One thing I think about are the boys' classes, and maybe it's a product of our student population, but in both cases, in both years where I had one boy and one girl class, the girls tended to be better behaved in class, and so I had spent more time managing behavior with the boys than I did with the girls. So the girls were like doing more stuff, and we were covering more material because they just got stuff done.
Right.
So I guess I would maybe think, gosh, how can we get the boys? How can we work with them? And maybe it would have been helpful if I had more boy-geared teaching methodologies, just to try and keep them more engaged. But we do, at least last year, we had a lot of lower performing boys, just in terms of like standardized test scores and the high school placement exam. They were like below average on a lot of the just those standardized things.
Mm-hmm.
And we did have some behavior problems, but I don't know. I feel like, and I've read this too, that there's sometimes the boys are getting left behind because there's been more focus on girls, or maybe girls just are more well adapted to being in school and sitting still. I was going to say one thing I've done, and this is maybe to a previous question. I was more tolerant of boys like standing up and working or moving around. I would be less irritated if they had to get up.
Oh, interesting.
And I had a lot of boys. Yeah, so just kind of letting them move around a little more, taking little breaks, because 90 minutes is a long time. So
yeah.
If we were kind of doing one thing for a really long time, I would say, okay, well, just take a 2 or 3 minute break and just get up and walk around.
Yeah. Okay.
And I remember one kid I had was just super squirrely, and he had finished whatever we were doing. I'm like, you know what, just go for a walk. So, walk down the hall, go down the staircase, and, take a little lap and come back.
Yeah.
So I think just me being a little more tolerant of, the boys some boys need to just move around and stuff.
Right. Interesting.
Not just sit down, stay in your seat.
Right. So there are some differences in the classroom when there are boys versus girls involved. And would you say that would happen in a co-ed classroom too, or was that just with the all boys?
Well, it's funny you say that because in my co-ed classroom, I've had these 2 boys, and they're always like playing around, like
Yeah.
horseplay in the back of the room before the bell rings. And yesterday or the day before, they're like on the ground,
Oh, wow.
wrestling or doing something, and I'm like, you guys are juniors. What is going on? So, I think I'm more tolerant of it at the 9th grade level, whereas 11th and 12th, the 12th graders aren't doing that. But
Yeah.
I have these 2 juniors that are doing that. I'm like, it's time to grow up just a little bit more.
Right, right.
Less tolerant of that kind of stuff in the co-ed classroom.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that's really all of my questions. Is there anything else that you think might be interesting for me to know about the single gender program or anything else in general?
No, I mean, I think it's been very interesting to participate in this, and I hope that it just helps the kids feel more confident in these areas. One thing I will say is it does take, having single gender, it takes the distraction of the opposite sex out.
Yeah.
So both genders definitely are distracted, and they act a little differently when there's boys to show off for or girls to show off for. So
Yeah.
I have noticed that.
Yeah.
That you take out that distraction, and so you get rid of some silly behavior on either side.
Right, right. Yeah.
Just showing off on either side.
Interesting.
So.
Which I did witness that in the chemistry class, Heather's class, because that's a co-ed, and they did a small group activity where I think there were 5 groups. 3 ended up being single gender groups, and 2 ended up being co-ed because of each one had a couple, a boy-girl couple that wanted to work together, and so then they each had like a third wheel, I guess, and one of those groups, the 2 boys actually sort of ganged up on the girl, which it was a girlfriend of one of the boys, but they just teased her through this whole group activity, and they said she was cheating, and then she got really upset and walked away, and then the 2 boys like fist bumped each other as if they had sort of planned the whole thing, so I thought that was really interesting. And she was very upset. She kind of went to the other room and put her head down, and so I thought, gosh, just that one interaction could affect her in that moment of a science class, right? And then she could feel defeated or whatever. But
right.
Yeah, so that was interesting.
Yeah, and I think maybe just with more maturity. So maybe again extending it at least another year or something would be helpful. But that's one reason. I mean, I've had plenty of couples in my classes. I remember being in high school, and like you're just staring at the boy that you like the entire class period and not paying any attention.
Right.
And that's actually one reason my kids are going to single gender schools, because I really do think it's a distraction.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All
okay,
right.
well, gosh,
Great.
good luck with everything.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and if you are interested, I can send you my final report or whatever. But it'll be less about like real analysis and more kind of just about the process of what I went through with observations and interviews and stuff. But
right.
But I wanted to offer that anyway, just in case you're interested. So.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, take care and enjoy the rest. Good luck with the rest of your semester.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll talk to you later. Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.